A biologist named Rupert Sheldrake had a dog owner keep a diary. The owner's name was Pam Smart. Her dog was a terrier named JT. And every afternoon, no matter what time Pam left work, no matter whether she took a cab or a bus or got a ride from someone JT had never met, the dog would walk to the front window and wait, not randomly, not all day. At the exact moment, Pam started heading home. Sheldrake documented this over months. He filmed it. He had Pam leave at random times she chose herself, times nobody in the house knew in advance. JT still moved to the window, and the question that came out of all of it wasn't just, is this dog psychic? It was something stranger and more interesting than that. What exactly is this dog reading? Because here's what you probably think is happening. You think your dog hears your car. You think they smell you coming from a few houses away. You think it's simple sensory stuff, and you'd be partly right. But partly right means you're missing the part that actually explains JT. A car can't be heard from 2 miles out. A scent doesn't travel in a straight line through city traffic. And in the controlled trials, Pam was in taxis, different vehicles every time. JT had no engine to recognize. So what was the dog actually tracking? That's the question this whole thing comes down to. And the answer pulls in biology, physics, routine, and something researchers are only now starting to take seriously. Let's start with smell, because it's where the easy explanation lives, and it's also genuinely remarkable. Your dog's nose has around 300 million olfactory receptors. You have about 6 million. The part of your dog's brain dedicated to processing scent is proportionally about 40 times larger than yours. When you leave the house in the morning, you leave behind a scent trail on every surface you touched, every chair you sat in, every door handle you pushed. That trail starts fading immediately, and your dog can track the rate of that fading. They're not just smelling that you were there. They're measuring how long ago. Some researchers believe dogs use the concentration gradient of your scent, the slow dimming of it across the day, as a kind of clock. When your scent gets faint enough, when the signal hits a certain threshold, the dog knows roughly when to expect you. It's not mystical. It's chemistry treated like a calendar, and that changes how you think about the window behavior entirely. Your dog isn't predicting the future. They're reading a physical signal that correlates with your return. The scent clock runs down. The dog moves to the window. Most of the time, the timing is close enough that it looks like anticipation. It looks like knowing. Because in a real sense, it is. But scent alone doesn't explain everything Sheldrake documented. And this is where it gets uncomfortable for the skeptics. In his controlled trials, filmed independently, JT's window sitting spiked at the moment Pam decided to leave. Not when she got close, not when she turned onto the street. At the moment of decision, miles away. Sheldrake proposed that dogs might be sensitive to something he called morphic resonance, an idea most of mainstream science hasn't accepted. And look, I'm not here to sell you on morphic resonance, but the timing data is real. Other researchers tried to replicate it and got messy results. Richard Wiseman ran his own trials with JT and concluded the dog spent a lot of time at the window in general. Sheldrake pushed back hard, argued Wiseman had misread the data. What isn't contested is the routine piece. And this is the part I think we underestimate constantly. Dogs are pattern machines. They're tracking your schedule in ways that go down to the granular. The specific creak of your shoes, the sequence of sounds before you leave, the time of day the light shifts in certain rooms, the smell of your coffee versus your work bag. Over months and years, a dog builds what's essentially a behavioral map of your day. They know which sounds precede your departure. They know which sounds precede your arrival. And some of that is so deeply encoded that the dog responds to signals you're not even aware you're broadcasting. You shifted your posture. You reached for your keys a half second differently. Your dog caught it before you finished the thought. There's a study from the University of Lincoln that tested whether dogs could distinguish between their owner's return and a stranger's arrival using sound alone. Researchers played recordings of familiar footsteps, unfamiliar footsteps, and the owner's specific gait pattern to dogs while monitoring their behavior. The dogs responded differently to the owner's steps, not just more excitedly, differently. Their bodies oriented toward the source, their ears moved before any visual confirmation was possible. The auditory signature of someone you love, apparently, is something your dog has filed away in fine detail. They know the rhythm of how you walk. That's not a metaphor. Now, here's something I keep thinking about. All of this sensory data, the scent gradient, the sound signature, the behavioral pattern map, your dog is running all of it at once, continuously, in the background, every day you're gone. And there's evidence that this process isn't neutral for them. Studies measuring cortisol levels in dogs left alone found that stress hormones rise during separation and drop as the expected return window approaches. The dog's body is responding to the countdown. Their nervous system is tracking your absence like a physical weight that slowly lifts. When you walk through the door, you're not just arriving. You're resolving something that's been building all day. That's why the greeting looks the way it does. It's not just happiness, it's relief. Some dogs handle that countdown better than others. And this connects directly to attachment, which connects back to everything the secure-based research tells us. Dogs with stable, predictable owners, the ones whose schedules are consistent and whose behavior is readable, tend to wait with less visible distress. Their cortisol curves are flatter. They don't pace as much. They seem to trust the return more completely. Dogs with unpredictable owners, irregular schedules, inconsistent behavior show higher baseline stress during separation. The anticipation system is there in every dog, but what it feels like to run it depends heavily on how reliable you've been. Your schedule is not just logistics. To your dog, it's safety data. There's also the question of what dogs do when the routine breaks. Because if the scent clock and the pattern map explain the anticipation, what happens when you come home 2 hours early? Or when someone else picks up your dog from a familiar place? What I find interesting is the research showing dogs need a moment. Early arrivals don't always produce the biggest greetings. Sometimes the dog hangs back slightly, recalibrates as if the prediction was wrong and the system needs to update. The expected event arrived, but the timing was off, and that seems to register as mild dissonance before the recognition fully kicks in. It's a small thing, but it suggests the dog isn't just responding to you. They're responding to you within a model of when you're supposed to appear. The whole anticipation system runs on expectation, not just identification. The Sheldrake versus Wiseman debate never fully resolved, and that's worth sitting with. The most rigorous version of the telepathy hypothesis hasn't been proven, but the sensory explanation, the scent gradient, the acoustic signature, the pattern learning, those are real and documented and honestly more interesting to me than a sixth sense would be, because they mean your dog built a model of you, a specific, detailed, continuously updated model built from thousands of observations they made while you weren't paying attention. Every morning you left, every afternoon you returned, every time your keys hit the counter, every time your shoes sounded on the porch, your dog was taking notes, and that model sits in them all day while you're gone. When the scent thins out, when the shadows shift, when the afternoon sounds change, some part of your dog starts orienting toward the door. Not because they're guessing, because every version of this day they've ever experienced has ended with you walking through it. So what do? They go, wait, I want to know what your dog does specifically, the weird particular version of this in your house. Does yours go to the window or the door? Does it start early or right before you arrive? Okay, that's a wrap up for today. New content is coming very soon.